I want you to just close your eyes for a second and picture one of the most powerful, enduring images in our collective history, the Tower of Babel.
Right.
A completely united humanity, everyone speaking a single tongue, and they're attempting this grand, just unbelievably audacious engineering feat.
A structure that's meant to reach right up into the heavens.
Exactly.
And of course, the myth tells us the whole project just ends in chaos. Divine intervention comes in, shatters their ability to communicate.
Their speech is confused,
Yeah.
and they're scattered across the face of the earth. And they leave behind this unfinished monument to human ambition.
It's the ultimate story for why we're so divided. But our mission today, I think, is to take this story and really test it.
Right, we've got this great stack of sources, ancient texts, archaeology reports, modern linguistic data. We're going to see how the story actually stacks up against history and science.
Exactly. We're going to find the real historical shadow of the tower, trace these ideas about language confusion back thousands of years before the Bible, and then use modern science to explain how we really ended up with 7,000 distinct languages.
It's a deep dive designed to ground a famous story in actual fact.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should start with the bricks and mortar. Where do we find the most plausible real-world candidate for this tower?
Well, we land squarely in ancient Babylon, and this is crucial. Babylon is called Babel in Hebrew.
Ah, okay, so the name is right there.
The name is a direct link, and the structure is the great ziggurat at Menanke. It was dedicated to the city's main god, Marduk. If you were approaching Babylon in the 6th century BC, you couldn't miss it.
Dominating the skyline is probably an understatement then. What does the physical evidence actually tell us about its scale?
German excavations at the site confirmed just how monumental it was. The base was enormous, a massive square over 91 meters on each side. It rose in 7 stories and likely reached a total height of about 90 meters, with the temple right at the top.
To put that in perspective for you, that's like a 30-story building today. I mean, for the ancient world, that is gigantic.
And what's really striking is how the archaeological findings line up with the written records, even from totally different cultures.
You mentioned the materials are the smoking gun.
The materials are absolutely the smoking gun. Cuneiform tablets from the site, administrative records. They specify construction with baked brick and bitumen.
Bitumen, that's like a natural asphalt they use for mortar.
Exactly. Now, you go and read the Genesis story, and what does it say? The builders used brick for stone and bitumen for mortar.
That is just too specific to be an accident.
Mm-hmm.
It means the biblical authors had firsthand knowledge of how the Babylonians built things. They saw it.
They almost certainly saw it during their captivity. And it wasn't just physical evidence. We have testimony. The Greek historian Herodotus, he traveled there, he saw the structure, wrote about its layout. He called it the Temple of Zeus Belus.
So everyone in the ancient world knew about this thing.
It was famous.
And this is where the story shifts from just architecture to pure imperial power. Menanke wasn't just built once, it was rebuilt, most famously by King Nebuchadnezzar II.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just a construction project, it was pure propaganda.
Oh, absolutely. We have records like the Cheyenne collection stele where Nebuchadnezzar's just boasting. I mean, he claims he mobilized labor from all countries everywhere.
All countries everywhere. What does that even mean in that context?
It means his empire. He's talking about vassal states, conquered peoples. They were forced to send tribute, to send their people to work on this grand centralized project.
So the construction itself was a symbol of his totalitarian control?
Mm-hmm. He even says his goal was to raise the top to the heaven, making it gleam bright as the sun. It's the height of imperial arrogance.
So let's connect the dots for you. If you're a Jewish captive, you've been dragged to Babylon after the invasion in 587 BC. You see this towering, newly finished structure. You see the forced labor, you hear the king's boasts. It is the perfect, tangible symbol of human pride that demands a theological response.
Yes. The myth gets grafted onto a real physical monument. But, and this is really fascinating, the theme of a single language being disrupted by the gods, that didn't start in Babylon.
It's older.
Much older. We have to go back even further into Mesopotamian mythology.
So, leaving Babylon, we're now looking at Sumer. Were there other stories about language confusion floating around the region?
Yes, and this is where we find, I think, a crucial insight. We look at the Epic of Emmerkar and the Lord of Harada. It dates to the 21st century BC.
So 1,000 years before Nebuchadnezzar.
1,000 years. This epic is about a conflict between the king of Uruk, Enmerkar, and the lord of a distant land called Harada. Enmerkar wants tribute gold, gems to build his temples.
And he sends a messenger.
He sends a messenger with this incredible, almost paradoxical message. It's called the Incantation of Nudimmud.
What does it say?
It's a plea, an incantation to the god Enki. It asks Enki to either restore or disrupt linguistic unity across 5 specific regions. The goal is explicit, that the whole universe, may they all address Enlil together in a single language.
So the idea of a lost single language and divine intervention causing confusion, it was already a deeply embedded theme in Mesopotamia.
It was a regional mythological trope. The biblical authors were working within a tradition, and it keeps popping up. Later on, you see Neo-Assyrian kings like Sennacherib describing the gods confusing the plans of his enemies and scattering them.
Divine confusion is a punishment for pride. It's a recurring motif.
A classic one.
Okay, we placed the myth in its historical cradle. Now, I think we need to leave the world of cuneiform and temples and tackle the big scientific question that Babel raises. Did humanity actually have a single mother tongue?
This brings us to the big debate, monogenesis versus polygenesis.
Single origin versus multiple origins.
Right. For centuries, the biblical paradigm dominated, and you had scholars frantically searching for the original Adamic language. Some people, and this is true, argued it was Dutch or Hungarian.
I'm guessing those claims are firmly in the dustbin of history now.
Oh, entirely. The literal idea that a single event, a Tower of Babel event, created all language diversity is, well, it's considered pseudo-linguistics today.
Why is that?
Vocabulary and grammar just change way too fast. We can reliably trace language families back maybe 5, maybe 10,000 years, but trying to connect, say, Navajo to Japanese using just linguistic tools, it's impossible. The trail goes cold.
So linguistically, the idea of multiple origins, polygenesis, seems stronger.
It does.
Yeah.
But, and here's the twist, anthropology and genetics offer a critical counterpoint.
Okay.
Work by people like Luca Cavalli-Sforza on human population genetics found these striking parallels between how genes are distributed globally and how language families are distributed.
Yeah, so as people spread out of Africa, they took their language or their capacity for language with them.
That's the idea. It makes a single origin, monogenesis, anthropologically more plausible. Maybe not a single language, but a single capacity for language that arose once.
Ah, that's the key distinction.
It is. Because all human languages rely on core universal principles. They all structure the world in similar ways. They all recognize time, and we all share the same anatomical and neurological hardware for it.
So what makes our language so utterly unique then, compared to, say, animals?
It really comes down to 2 properties. You look at animal communication, like a monkey's alarm call, and that's a fixed system, or the famous chimp, Nim Chimpsky, his longest signed sentence was just, give, eat, orange, me eat.
Repetitive, no real grammar, just a demand.
Exactly. Human language, on the other hand, has compositionality and is referential.
Unpack those for us.
Compositionality is just our infinite creativity. You can take a small set of words, subjects, verbs, objects, and recombine them endlessly to make brand new sentences that have never been said before.
It's not just learning words, it's learning a system for combining them.
That's the magic. And it's referential. We can exchange specific information, not just danger, but yesterday I saw a lion near the river, but I think it will be gone by tomorrow.
You can talk about the past, the future, things that aren't even real.
And that capacity, the fossil and genetic data suggests, arose in anatomically modern Homo sapiens somewhere between 150,000 to 200,000 years ago.
And what about the specific gene we hear about, the FOXP2 gene?
Right, that's where the story gets really nuanced. Early studies were surprising because they found that Neanderthals actually shared the same sequence of the FOXP2 gene as we do.
The gene itself wasn't the magic bullet.
No, think of it like a recipe. We and Neanderthals had the same key ingredient, but later research showed that modern humans have changes in the regulation of that gene. It wasn't the ingredient that changed, but the recipe itself, how and when the gene is turned on and off in the brain.
And that tiny difference in the recipe might be what allows for the fine motor control needed for our complex speech.
That's the leading hypothesis. It's an incredible example of fine-tuning.
It is. Now let's circle back to the core theme of the Babel myth. Societal collapse brought on by ambition. Our sources point to a massive, real-world collapse that really parallels this narrative.
Yes, this is the collapse of the Akkadian Empire and other societies across the Fertile Crescent, and it's strongly correlated with something called the 4.2 Kara rapid climate change event.
So 4,200 years ago, there's a major climate shift. A big drought wiped them out.
That's the simple story, but the truth our data suggests is more complicated. The climate event was more of a final push. The real problem was a long-term self-inflicted vulnerability. It was a period of unsustainable overshoot.
Overshoot, meaning they grew beyond the limits of their environment.
Precisely. Survey data shows that between about 4,600 and 4,100 years ago, the population growth just exceeded the carrying capacity of the land. There were too many people supported by a system that was becoming more and more fragile.
How are they pulling that off? How do they support that boom?
By expanding into the drier zone areas with less than 300 millimeters of rain a year. This was only possible because of a specialized economy based on massive textile production.
Wool from sheep and goats.
Exactly. Herds could graze in these marginal dry lands, and the wool created a surplus of valuable textiles they could trade for food grown in better watered areas.
So the very economic engine that drove their growth, this massive wool trade, was also building in this huge systemic risk.
Yes, it created a highly centralized and incredibly vulnerable system. If trade routes broke down, or if a serious drought hit that marginal pasture land, the whole thing was a house of cards.
So the 4.2 Kaya climate event wasn't the cause, it was the trigger. The system was already fragile because of unchecked ambition.
It had maximized its own fragility. You see this perfect parallel with the Tower story, a grand, complex system built on reaching beyond sensible limits, which leads directly to collapse and scattering.
And it explains why the collapse wasn't uniform. You mentioned some well-watered regions actually did okay.
They did. Places in western Syria, for example, show remarkable continuity, even growth. Local resilience mattered more than the big global climate shift.
What an incredible journey. We've traced the Tower of Babel from the actual bricks of Edamananke through the deep mythological roots in Sumer and all the way to the evolutionary origins of what makes our language so special.
The key threads are pretty clear. The Tower story has tangible roots in that massive ziggurat in Babylon. The theme of language division is much older, with Sumerian parallels. And science shows our unique linguistic capacity probably emerged around 150,000 to 200,000 years ago.
The ultimate lesson of the tower, which is really reinforced by the archaeology of that 4.2 Kia collapse, is that the failure of these huge, complex human societies is rarely about one single catastrophe.
No, it's the fragility that's created by unchecked ambition and unsustainable growth. Whether that growth is measured in bricks reaching the sky or in populations expanding beyond what the environment can support.
Which really brings it home to us today.
And that raises the essential question for you to think about. We are building our own global projects. We're expanding our reach, relying on ever more complex systems. What grand societal project are we currently building that relies on an unsustainable overshoot? And what external stressor might be the one to reveal that self-created fragility? It's that same tension between ambition and vulnerability.